Welcome to Quilting with Don. How to make a quilt label. I know, pretty standard stuff, not necessarily part of something you consider as essential for making a quilt. But I recently made the label for Eye of Sauron, and I'll show it to you how it came out because I'm going to show you how I did it on another one. So maybe you'll recognize this is the backing of Eye of Sauron with the two-color binding. This is the gold on the front, and then you see the black on the back. And look, there's the label. Check it out. You're like, oh, that's an interesting looking label. Well, it is. So how did I do it? Well, that's what I'm going to explain to you. But it's actually a printed label using a printer on fabric. And then I'll go over what you need to do it. But it's a two-sided label in the sense that it's got the label on top with the border you saw. And then another piece of fabric underneath that it's all sewn together so that it keeps its shape and it's easy to then stitch onto the back of the quilt. So what you're going to need, I highly recommend getting some white fabric. Enough to do the front. I did my label, starting size was 7 inches by 7 inches. So you need a white fabric. Then you need your border fabric. The white I started with was a 1-inch strip that was more or less 1 inch of width of fabric. This is, oh, I should say, what am I doing a label for? I'm doing a label for Vista boxes, the quilt I did two quilts ago. And this is one of my favorite materials from Vista boxes. It's this nice purple color, so I'm going to do my border in this. For the back of the label, you can either use the backing fabric, like you see here on Eye of Sauron. For Vista boxes, this was my backing fabric. You can use that, but I want the white to be very white, so I'm going to use another piece of white fabric for the back. What you also need, okay, so here's the supplies you need. You need the white fabric for the label, 7 inches, at least 7 inches by 7 inches to follow my design. You need a 1-inch strip of the border color with the fabric. Then you need to be able to print the label on the fabric. You need something no more complex than freezer paper, because it's got wax on one side, and you'll see how that works. You need your thread, you need your needles, you need that's pretty much it. Of course, you need a printer. So the process I'm going to follow to make the label, and you can refer back to this list if you like, is you're going to prepare the white fabric for printing. So that simply means cutting it to the right size and then ironing on a piece of the freezer paper onto the back side of the fabric. That stiffens it up. Then you can feed it to the printer and print it. Now after you printed it, you have to set the ink with the iron. So you peel off the freezer paper and you just iron it with the dry iron to set the ink on the fabric, and it'll last. It'll last a few washes. I wouldn't put this type of label on something you wash all the time, because I can't guarantee that the ink will stay forever. But it's good for 1 or 2 washes, because I washed a previous label I did this way and it worked out fine. So obviously you need to design your label too. So after you've fixed and printed the label, then you add the border, 1 inch all around. That's what I did. And then here's the fun part. Then you're going to sew all around the back side of the label with another fabric. I'm going to use white. Sew it all the way around. You're going to say, well, how am I going to flip it around? Because you're going to sew it good sides together. And then you're going to somehow flip it? Yes. Well, I'll explain that. But there is a way to flip it that's really cool. And then you'll have this label ready to be sewn after you press it, ready to be sewn onto the quilt back. That's what I'm going to do. All right, going to cut the fabric. First, there's a 7 by 7 inch piece of white fabric. Yeah. Just truing up the first edge. Cutting 7 inches, 11 to 18 is 7 inches. Get trim up an edge, one more. That's right, true, 10 to 17. And I'm using this cutting mat as my guide. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's got to be damn close. That's all. There we go. My 7-inch square of fabric. Put that aside. Then we need to do the 1 inch with the fabric of my purple. truing the edge. And then cutting 1 inch. Okay, that's it for now. You saw me cut the fabric. I just did the same thing for the freezer paper. And the shiny side is the waxy side. So all I'm going to do is now iron with the dry iron to the back side of this white fabric, which looks the same on either side, really. So, yeah, let's arbitrarily call this the back side. So, freezer wax down on top of the freezer paper. What I'm going to also do, I've put it here somewhere, is use a piece of parchment paper. There it is. Because I don't want any wax to end up on the ironing board. That's all. So a little bit of parchment paper, fabric down, wax, paper, freezer paper on top. And look at that, they even line up. Nice. Dry iron, hot, ready to go. And you iron it down. That's all you do. And the freezer paper will stick to the fabric. Make it nice and stiff for printing. Okay, so now I'm going to go down, I'm not going to film this, but I'm going to go down to my printer and print out the design you see on the screen here, which is what I'm making for Vista boxes. I'm just going to simply feed this into my printer and have it print on the fabric side with using regular printer ink, and you'll see how it comes out. Okay, I just realized I did things differently the last time than what I'm doing this time. Very simply, I actually started with a piece of fabric and freezer paper that was 8 inches by 8 inches, let's say. Because then I printed the design which I've shown you on the paper and fabric combination, and then I trimmed to the line that the printer would have given me to the 7 by 7. So to make your life easier, I would recommend, instead of doing what I said at the beginning and starting with a 7 inch by 7 inch piece of fabric and freezer paper, actually make it a bit wider so you can print and center the design. You could even do it 8.5 by 11 like your printer likes. Your printer's like 8.5 by 11, right? Standard paper. So if you want to glue your fabric to your freezer paper with that size, then print your design and then cut it to the 7 by 7. There's always more than one way to skin the cat, as they say. But this is fine. So now what I've done is I printed this off. Looks good. I'm simply going to take the dry iron with the parchment paper and iron down the ink so that it sets the ink on the fabric. Done. And it works. It'll let it cool off a bit, then I'll peel off the freezer paper. And we're good to go. I'm going to sew on the 2 side borders first. I even cut these to little, because this is 7 inches by 7 inches, so I cut the borders just a little more than 7, just to give me a little extra wiggle room. Goods to goods. Sew the side on. Okay, I ironed this border so you can see the 2 sides here. I put it on top and bottom. Now, this actually works with the math, because it should be 8 inches across the top and bottom, and it is. So I cut my 2 strips to 8 inches each, a little more actually like I did before to make sure that everything works well, and I put them on. Right, so I've got the label done on the front side. So now what I'm going to do is, I say, you can either attach the matching backing fabric to the back side of this. Actually, you know what? You could even sew this directly to the quilt back, but I don't want to do that because you get something that's easier to sew when it's stiffened by another layer of fabric. It just looks better too, I think. Now, so we can either sew on the back side the same size layer of backing fabric, but I tested this, and because it's on white fabric, I like it better when it's backed by another piece of white fabric, like so. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut another piece of fabric to match, of the white fabric to match this label, sew them together, good side to good side, okay? Hold that thought. All right, I now have goods to goods, label, that's the backside label, and white fabric. and I've pinned them so that they're gonna be steady when I sew them. And done, all the way around. Now the last thing I'm gonna do, maybe I should point out that I learned this from Carolyn. I didn't make this up. What I'm gonna do is for each of these corners, gonna trim them or snowball them, whatever the right terminology is. So when you'll see when I do the magic, those corners don't get all bunchy and puffy. So here's where the magic comes. You'll see I've got the back side of the label here, and then the white fabric on the other side. You're gonna say, and I sewed all the way around without leaving a slit or anything else. So you're saying to yourself, right, maybe, how the heck am I gonna make this work? Well, Carolyn showed me this trick, and if I don't screw it up royally, what you do is you're gonna put a slit in the backing of the fabric here. All right, here. But you gotta make sure you're not actually touching the label, and I'm not. You put a little slit there. Right? I expand that slit. Once again, making sure I'm not touching the label. And then, I've got a slit here. You carefully pull things, the front, through the slit. Just carefully pull it through. It's a bit fussy, but it works. I'm just slowly pulling everything through. You're starting to see the shape take form, eh? So then, see, I've got it mostly out now. You take a handy dandy stick and you poke out the corners. Like I'm doing here. There we go. And done. And so, that's gonna get ironed, obviously. Are you ready for the big reveal? Da da da! There it is! There's my label. So I'm gonna iron it so that the border, you don't see the backing. And there's my label, ready to be, almost ready. I'm just gonna iron it and it'll be ready to be sewn on to the back of the quilt. Isn't that cool? That came out really good. It says Vistabox's 3-dimensional excitement. And done. Total time in about 3 hours. And I'll show you a little more close up, but it's done. It looks great. So, here we are. Da-da-da! Here is my label, hand sewn onto the backing of the Vistabox's quilt. If you don't know what I'm talking about, with this Vistabox's, then refer to the 2 quilts ago that I made. It was a wonderful 3-dimensional pattern with triangles, lots and lots, 792 triangles if I recall. But there you go. So hope you enjoyed this little mini how to make a label a la Dawn. Actually, I learned it from Carolyn. But I like the way it works, and this is my standard methodology for doing labels from now on. Where you use the printer, you print the label, you add a little border, you add a backing to the label, then you sew it onto the back side of the quilt. And that's great. It turns out great. So, like I say, hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, happy quilting.